Hi there, it's Kevin with Deckbuilder.com here with just a short little video. Thought I'd get some videos out there. I'm working on two very intense editing videos, so they're taking forever to do, and I'm not the best at keeping focused and on task. So instead of missing another day without content, I thought I'd review some decks for the 5.0 lists for the last week. How they're actually doing this now they do daily. Instead of doing the daily 5.0 lists, they pick a format each day. So I believe that Mondays is, maybe they rotate how it works on this, but Monday's usually when the standard's released, then modern's released, then Pauper's released, then legacy's released. And I believe I don't know if they do vintage the next day or if they do commander and vintage on the same day. So instead of releasing them in daily chunks, they do weekly chunks, and then they switched it up to showcase any unique decks that weren't the same as another deck already showcased. So it still is hiding data, which I'm not the biggest fan of, but you can still find paper tournaments and challenge when they do the challenge, the weekly challenges for the formats, to really get a good overall idea of what is dominating the current meta. So anyway, I just wanted to review these decks because there are some gems, absolute gems in the Pauper format. And this is exciting because innovation is still alive and well. I know a lot of you are being frustrated with me creating Pauper content like crazy. It's just something that I personally am really into at the moment. Standard to me is still a format that's riddled with value creatures, and what I would consider the power level of removal spells is too high for where I want standard to be. I think I'm the only one actually saying this now, but I did a tweet about how energy was never the problem, and it got a bunch of flack and retweets, where it's actually the removal package of Fatal Push, Vraska's Contempt, Fumigate, Search for or Settle the Wreckage, and then we even have Hour of Devastation, we have Magma Spray, Lightning Strike, Harness Lightning. We have every answer in the entire world in standard right now, and they're all, I think, a little bit under, like, if you compare the answers, the power level of the answers versus the power level of the creatures, the power level of the answers is much, much, much higher. So it's created and couple that with the fact that there aren't any sort of non-creature besides Authority of the Consuls, or no, excuse me, there's another answer, instead of Approach the Second Sun in the format. And so you still have to win the game. The win cons still have to be creatures. So it created a format where only value creatures are playable. So that's why Energy dominated and Ramming Up Red dominated. And then when Energy was nerfed and Ramming Up was nerfed, we still see Red as the #1 deck, and we still see the successor to Energy going over to an Energy variant that didn't use Attune with Aether or Rogue Refiner, which was Grixis. So that's kind of the problem right now, as you see either the Phoenix dominated decks, the Scarab God dominated decks, or the Grixis Energy dominated decks, because all of those have value. So it's more important for your creature to replace itself than it is for your creature to be like a significant threat. So again, Scarab God gets to replace itself. The Phoenix will require 2 removal spells, and that's just how standard plays out. To me, that format is more defined by who draws better, or when it actually comes down to it, who top decks better, which is very frustrating as a competitive player. You still have to be good at managing resources, but again, a lot of games just do you have the answer for Scarab God or Phoenix? Nope. Okay. That's the end of the game. So Pauper is a format where I think is really, really more heavily intensive in skill. And it is a format defined by answers. Therefore, that's one of the reasons why I'm addicted to the format. I also have invested a lot in this format, so there's a lot at stake here on the success of the format. So a lot of you might criticize me on that, but the whole thing is I only invest in things that I believe in. So I don't think that people should get flack on promoting things they've also invested in because they genuinely do like the format. I think that if there is nefarious reasons for people to do that, yes, you can criticize, but I mean, that's just life. Everyone gravitates to what they enjoy, and for me, that is Pauper. So here we'll start off the deck list here with analysis. This is another 5.0 with the Tireless Tribe combo. This deck tries to win with the Tireless Tribe, discarding cards from your hand until you have usually 21 life. You can get up to, with this deck, I've been able to get up to 28 life, I believe. So 21, 25, 29. So 4, 8, 12, 16, 20, and then you get the 1 damage. And be able to, there's restrictions if you can gain enough life. Like a lot of times elves just gets out of range for the Tyler's Tribe to actually win. And so you have to think about that. But it is one of the better all-in decks because it's easy to protect the combo with cards like Circular Logic when you're ready to go off. And the combo is Inside Out in Tyler's Tribe. Inside Out switches the target creature's power and toughness, and then you draw a card. And the Tyler's Tribe then switches it off to, usually, like I said, a 21 damage. And you use cards like Shadow Rift to give it unblockable. And sometimes they'll run some other cards in here to really... like Giga Drowse, I guess, is okay because it can tap down all the blockers, and then you can just swing in for lethal. So the deck runs a lot of like Ponder, Preordains, Gataxian Probes, Brainstorms. This is a package that runs almost a full playset of each one of them, just the Preordains being the lowest one. And then it utilizes Gush to have that card draw. Gush is really, really good in this deck because it allows you to actually return 2 islands. But this is where Gush is actually an advantage by returning the 2 islands, because then that's 8 points of damage that you get by returning the 2 islands plus drawing 2 cards. So this card alone, like if you're down to low resources, you get 2 cards in your hand from drawing and 2 islands. That's 4, 8, 12, 16 damage right there. You just have to have 1 other card in hand, and then the Gush will win you the game there. So even if you're down to just Inside Out and Gush, the Inside Out will draw the card, replace it, and you can just win there. So anyway, that is the basis of the Tyler's Tribe deck. It's definitely a very, very potent deck. You see a guy named Helicatet, I think, top 8 with this, or 5-0 with this very, very frequently. All right, so this one is a Stoppie Deck. Stoppie Deck has been around forever. It's good when Delver's big, and right now Delver is really, really potent. So tries to just swarm with a lot of creatures that have either work with the Elephant Guide or Rancor very well, like the Vault Scourge or the Skargan Pit Skulk or the Solana Ledgewalker. So we have the pseudo unblockable here and pseudo unblockable here. It's basically a flying creature with hexproof. We have a flying creature here. We have a creature that comes back, and the Kieran Ranger just helps ramp as well as untap creatures to then block. Then El Sentinel 2 is just a 2-mana or 2/2 for 1 mana, and Nest Invader helps you against Edict effects by putting out a 0/1 Eldrazi Spawn, which can also be Rancored or Elephant Guide if you want to put it on that. So Hunger the Howlpack pumps them up, Rancor, Elephant Guide. Yep, just a creature, just a classic Stompy type list. And then we have the classic mono black control, which this one's utilizing the Thorn of Black Rose in the main, and Chittering Rats, Crypt Rats, the Witches, Grey Merchant, and Phyrexian Rager with the Chainer's Edicts, and cards like Guess Verdict, Disfigure, Victim of Night, Deadweight, the Oubliette to run as the control. All right, so here is where we get to the first cool innovation. I like to call this deck Edicts. I've never seen it before. Again, I'm kind of a noob when it comes to Pauper. Remember, my lifespan here is just a couple months where I've been really following. But look how many Edicts this deck runs. It runs Innocent Blood, Chainer's Edict, Diabolic Edict, all in this list. What I really like about this is the Spinning Darkness. This has been like a pet card of mine for a while. I've been trying to figure out how to make it work. I've used it in some Madness decks before and some Unearth, as well as some kind of pseudo dredge type strategies, because you may remove the top 3 black cards in your graveyard from the game instead of paying Spinning Darkness's casting cost. Spinning Darkness deals 3 damage to target non-black creature, and you gain 3 life. So with this deck card, if you run this in your deck, you do need to keep track of where your graveyard's at. You can't just mess around. Like other formats, it doesn't matter what you do. You can kind of like shuffle up your graveyard, like in Modern Forward. But Legacy cards, there are specific cards that do matter with the sequence of your graveyard, so keep that in mind with Spinning Darkness. So it has to be the top 3 black cards you get rid of. But it's a very powerful removal spell. 3 damage and 3 life for just 3 black cards in your graveyard. So of course it's running a lot of black cards in the graveyard. It's also running one of my favorite cards, which is the Grim Harvest, that allows you to recover. See if I can zoom in a little more without screwing this up. Yeah, that works out a little bit better. We got the so Grim Harvest says when return target creature card from your graveyard hand, and when a creature dies, you can recover. So it's got some cool little abilities with like the Crypt Rats. You can kill your Crypt Rats and then get back the Grim Harvest. Or you can even, late game, you can go Mole Drifter and then Grim Harvest it back for 6 mana. So you can just keep drawing the cards off the Mole Drifter and then recover the Grim Harvest, and then cast the Grim Harvest to get back the Mole Drifter, and then evoke it in to get the Grim Harvest. But by that point, you do need a lot of mana. This deck, though, does run a lot of mana with Dimir Aqueducts and the Pristine Talisman, making sure you hit those land drops. So pretty sweet little Fume Spitter tech, too, for the 1/1s so that they define the format. Another cool card is to Consult the Necrosages, whether you need to draw a card or have your opponent discard cards. This is the perfect one for the situation. Very, very excited about this card because it's, again, this was a card I loved to draft back in the day because it's exactly what you want on a discard type outlet is a different option. So drawing 2 or discarding 2 is sorcery speed, doesn't really matter. So it's both. So this card is a 2-for-1. It's either a divination or a mind rot, depending on what is better. We have the Deep Analysis, which is just good card draw, and the Raven's Crime that allows you to get rid of those excess lands. So over and over and over, you can just make your opponent take out their hand with the Raven's Crime. So I'm pretty sure it against non-creature based decks, it tries to switch over to adding some more threats like the Thorn of the Black Rose, which is kind of a pretty terrible threat, but I'm sure you can get there, the Crypt Rats eventually, and brings in negates and more Deep Analysis and whatnot, Nausea in the sideboard. Really cool deck. And then we get into the deck why I decided to do this. Look at the innovation here. This is a bird / Rebel deck. I don't think they don't have anything in here that actually deals with bird. Would be pretty sweet if they did. Sorry about the poor quality by Magic's website. It's hard to read these cards. They don't use the most high-res images here. But anyway, this is a Rebel strategy. So we have the Aven Rift Watcher. That's a Rebel. We have the Defiant Falcon, which is a 1/1 flying, which has 4 and tap. Search your library for a Rebel card with Prismatic 3 or less and put it into play. Then shuffle. So it allows you to go get the Rift Watchers. Then we have, or a Nightwing Glider, who is a Rebel, has flying protection from black. So that's really key versus the black removal spells. Got to keep in mind, though, Edict effects. But we do have the Squadron Hawks to kind of pad against the Edict effects. The Ramosian Lieutenant, which searches for a Rebel with converted mana cost 3 or less as well as the Sergeant, which goes and gets 1 for 2 or less. So it can go get Defiant Falcons, it can go get a few of the other Rebels, and then you can just, once you have enough mana, you can just continue to use these as this card advantage draw engine until you're ready to swing in for lethal. So this one has protection from red. Again, this is a pain for red decks to deal with, the Glider. And again, we have another Rebel Dash Shadow. When it attacks as a blocking it, do 1 damage to target creature. If you do, prevent the damage, so you can get rid of problematic creatures. There are a lot of them that do have 1 toughness. We're talking about a lot of Delvers before they're flipped. A lot of the Fairy Miscreant type cards. A lot of cards out of even Elves and Stompy, and I'm surprised that this one isn't a higher number. There is one more in the sideboard, though. Prismatic Strands is just one of the best cards in Pauper. I think any white deck should be running it because it's just a silver bullet versus many, many decks. Bone Splinter's the go-to card just to pump up. It's kind of their Rancor effect in this list. And then we have a Bound of Silence, which is a cool tech because it's a tribal enchantment Rebel. So you can actually tutor it up with these 3-drops and then lock down your opponent's creatures. Chimano's Blessing, again, a good little card to protect your creatures, and a Journey to Nowhere as the removal of choice in here. The sideboard has a pretty decent cards here. Creatures you control +0, +1. This helps against electrickery type effects. You can actually morph it down for a creature. This is a pretty sweet card. I think I should definitely think about using this in Kadatha Boros. Electrickery is a pain in the butt for Kadatha Boros, and usually I use cards like Prismatic Strands to protect it, but Lumathread Field actually seems pretty sweet for the Kadatha Boros list, as you can even bounce it back late game to morph it over as a creature if you absolutely need it, but to protect against electrickery and nausea type effects. So, man, yeah, this is a sweet, sweet little tech. That's what I love about Pauper. There's a lot of things going throughout the history of Magic that are something you can bring in to protect or to answer certain threats. And electrickery is starting to be used in tons of decks. The Skred Skred Delver is the #1 deck at the moment, and they do use Electrickeries like crazy. It's one of the huge advantages to running Skred Delver over just mono blue Delver. All right, so this one is another, this is just the good old Torture's Existence deck. Torture's Existence is a fun little combo. You use the Golgari Brown Scale to just gain a ton of life. It has Dredge 2, and when you dredge it, you gain 2 life. And then it's got card advantage through the Grave Scrabbler. If you pay the Madness cost, you get to return a creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. So it's your best card with the Tortured Existence. Once you get the combo down, it's just tons of card advantage. And then you have a lot of other utility cards like the Stinkweed Imp to help dredge, the Perilous Mirror that can just take out creatures after it dies, the Spore Frog, which is a fog on a stick, the Mesmeric Fiend, the Cycler that you can then just use to cycle to draw cards. It works with your dredge as well. The Angler can be your beater, and this deck is just a really, really potent deck for what it does. Very, very cool. Then we have the this is a black-blue, I would say graveyard. Yeah, definitely graveyard-based strategy that uses the Thought Scour and the Mental Note, which do basically the exact same thing. Yeah, so put the top 2 cards of your library. This actually targets a player. That's the difference between it. So you're trying to fill up your own graveyard to get out a quick Angler or Scavenger. I've seen decks like this that actually use... So this one wants to go with Stitch Drake. Okay, so I'm seeing why this one's a little heavier on the creatures. I've seen deck lists of these particular decks that are only using Angler and maybe like Muldrifter as the win con. So there's a lot of ways to build these black-blue graveyard-based decks. This is a sweet little tech. Soul Manipulation is one of my favorite cards. Counter a creature spell and return to a creature card from your graveyard or hand. Choose one or both. I love this card in Pauper. One of my favorite cards to play, as it's just pure gas. I've had this with a Archaeomancer or the Mnemonic Wall for like a nice little combo to keep getting things back. And it's really fun even with like Muldrifters. You counterspell, get a Muldrifter back, rinse and repeat. So this is a very underused card in my opinion, the Soul Manipulation. Another one in the sideboard here. Has the Thorn of the Black Rose, Hydroblast, Apoclitic. Yep, Vampiric Link. Vampiric Link's pretty good against the burn decks. You can throw this on your either a Stitch Drake or ideally on your Angler. And then the Angler's tough to deal with in burn. It's just the 5 toughness requires 2 burn spells a lot of times. And the Vampiric Link, if it just hits once, is going to be really, really potent. Sometimes I've seen Vampiric Link be put on like Crypt Rats and things like that to gain a bunch of life. No Crypt Rats in this deck as it is heavy on the blue. All right, so we have the, this is just the Tron, a good old Tron list that uses the Pulse of Marasa rinse and repeat combo, as well as no Capsize in this one. Usually they do run Capsize, another alternate win condition through the Urza's Mind, but this one just is going more the mystical teachings, a lot of fog type effects, and we'll flicker the Muldrifter and the Mnemonic Wall, and the Dignitary until you are ready to, what is the win con? It's just this is just heavy rinse and repeat until... Yeah, this eventually beat down with Muldrifters is what it looks like. I don't see if someone in the comment section might see where I'm missing another win con. A lot of times, I guess they can mill with Compelling Argument. Yeah, eventually the wall can bring back Compelling Argument over and over and over and over. That's kind of awkward as the win con, but I guess it works. The thing is that you can, there's Rolling Thunder, there's Capsize, there's a lot of different things you can eventually run as your win con. Capsize eventually returns all the permanents to the opponent's hand, and you just grind them out that way. So it doesn't look like they have any other win cons that they add in the sideboard here. Then we have the Nimbic Cyclops Kilnfiend All-In deck. Usually Delver's in this list. This is the heavier on the spells. This one's a lot more susceptible to Disruption and Edict effects, as you only have a few creatures. But it does have more of the All-In with Temur Battle Rage and Mutagenic Growth. The difference between the two decks, between the Delver version of this and the All-In Kilnfiend Nimbic Cyclops, is usually you run a lot more like counter magic in the Delver version. This one, though, is running all pumps. Yeah, a lot of pumps here. These two, well, it's just trying to get a Temur Battle Rage and a Mutagenic Growth because it's lethal with either one of these. Okay, I have a sweet little tech with Kilnfiend, by the way, I'll be showing. It's Kilnfiend Infect, and it frequently kills on turn 3. It's stupid. Simian Spirit Guide needs banned in this dumb format, too. I'm actually thinking I should probably put Lotus Petals in the deck as well, and try to get off a really fast kill. All right, so now we have this is the other version, like I said, the heavier on the Delver. The difference between these two decks is just instead of going heavy on the Mutagenic Growth and Temur Battle Rage, it is then going with more control, like the Lightning Bolts, Brainstorm, Dispel, Gataxian Poe, Ponder, Preordain. So full play set of most of these. And very similar, though, in the decks. This deck is a deck that is starting to gain momentum. This is a Flurry of Horns win condition deck. This is where they try to play a ton of the bounce and control, and then eventually win with Flurry of the Hordes. Put 2/2/3 Minotaur creatures tokens with haste on the battlefield. They attack in, and so it's 4 damage haste, and then it's only 5 turns you need to hit with the Flurry. And so if you can guarantee that you can keep their board empty, this can actually be a pretty good win con. It uses Piece of the Puzzle to dig for the Flurry of the Horns, and then uses Accumulated Knowledge for the card advantage. I've seen deep analysis in these ones too. There's a lot of ways you can build this. This one seems to be heavy on like the bolts and the flame slashes, so more on the disrupting the creatures once they've hit the board rather than trying to counterspell them. But again, this is a blue deck, so there's a bazillion ways you can actually run this to try to establish the control and then the Flurry of the Horn win cons. Very good against Edict effects because it takes a ton of... I played against this with Karatha Boros and lost 1-2 against this deck, and both times I think my opponent only had like 4 cards left in their deck. It was just so grindy versus this. But the Karatha Boros version I'm running is actual Karatha Boros, so it's the Karatha Rebirth, and so my opponent had to use so much removal spells just to deal with those 1/1 tokens, and it gave me a lot of blockers too. Very, very grindy matchups. All right, so now we actually have an Infect deck. So we have Blight Mama, Glistering Elf, Acre Claw, Mirror, the Llanowar Augur, and the Rotwolf. So this tries to establish an Augur early on, and then it also helps sort of against the Edict base effects. The problem with the Augur is you have to you sacrifice it during your upkeep. So you're basically televising to your opponent that you're ready to... that's why I like the Seal of Strength just better than the Augur. I understand the Augur does have the ability to play as a blocker till you're ready to go, but the Seal of Strength doesn't die to Edict. So, and you don't have to do it during your upkeep. So, but I mean, this is a very classic Infect base deck. There still are some really good Infect cards. The Glistener Elf, the Kirklemere, and the Blight Mamba are all very decent. A lot of times you can splash black or blue and you have the Blighted Agent or the Plague Stinger, but again, the whole mana base is very awkward for aggro decks if you splash another color, because you would definitely have to use tap lands at that point, and this deck is trying to avoid that. So just the good old Apostle's Blessing, Groundswell, Mutagenic Grove, Vines of the Vastwood, Rancor. This is very typical. Infect is alive and well in Pauper. You see it every now and again. Now here is one of my favorite decks. This is going to be the Pestilence, white-black Pestilence. I prefer the using the Grim Harvest as my alternate win condition. A lot of them, though, don't. This one seems to be just heavier on the creatures than I normally run, and it has a lot of life gain in here. What I like about the black-white Pestilence is it's got game versus both aggro and control, because this is miserable to try to grind out, because a lot of these cards just have a lot of card advantage, like the Core Skyfisher bouncing the Thraben Inspectors. That's where I like the Grim Harvest, though, to me is key versus the control list. So you have a great matchup versus Elves. You have a great matchup versus Bogles, and Delver seems to be the Achilles heel for this deck. I have a lot of problems with Delver. It's not unbeatable, but it's tough, because once Delver does establish the threat, it feels like a lot of times you're behind, because you do play tons of tap lands in this deck. This one seems to be playing less than I was playing, because they have 5 and 7. It does have a higher land count, and not running the Ash Barrens. I typically run Ash Barrens in this deck because it's a really good card to then cycle to. What ends up happening is you get flooded when you play the removal route, and eventually you need to find non-land cards, and that Ash Barrens can be bounced from your Orzhov Basilica, so you can play it early, and then Basilica can bounce it back, and then you can cycle it, and that basically gets rid of some lands for you to draw into. All right, so this looks like this is a Karatha Boros list. Karatha Boros is a very good deck versus Delver, but I found that Karatha Boros only really beats Delver. I think it has like a weak matchup versus basically everything else. It's pretty 50-50 or under 50-50. It's got game versus... I 4-0'd with this in our last paper tournament we ran at Gonro Games. I beat Tron. I beat Bogles. Got very lucky versus Bogles. I beat... what are the other matchups that I beat? Mono Black Control, and I can't remember what the other one was. Stoppie. Yeah, Stoppie were the decks that I beat, I believe. And it feels like this deck can just win out of nowhere with the amount of Galvanic Blasts and Lightning Bolts. And it's got some little tricks up its sleeve. I'm surprised this one's not using Prismatic Strands, because I think it's a must in this deck. This one decided not to go because that's like the good matchup I had versus the mono black control. I was able to fog a huge Crypt Rats, and then Bogles I was able to fog a lethal attack for Bogles, and then lethal on the backswing with the rally the peasants. And this version doesn't seem to. This is more the control version of it with the Palace Sentinels and the Seeker of the Ways. So Cathathalboros can be built a number of different ways. Very flexible. That's what I like about Pauper. You never know exactly what you're up against. You have to always think like, what could my opponent possibly have? And again, I don't know why they call this Cathathalboros anymore, because it really doesn't use Kadatha Rebirth. It has gone over to more just what we call Boros Metalcraft for the Galvanic Blast to hit for 4 damage, and just a lot of value creatures to stall the game and get in for some early points of damage. So again, I play this a little bit different, but my experience playing this deck is it's extremely good versus Delver, but it's weak against a lot of the other decks. Or a little bit under 50%. But I could be wrong there. It should be just my anecdotal experience. All right, so this one is a Chittering Rats and Angler complete land destruction deck for Dark Ritual. So this is trying to Dark Ritual off into a Choking Sands or a Rancid Earth or an Icequake. So just black land destruction, very good versus like Tron, and it's very good versus 2-color decks. Where this deck struggles with is like Burn. Very, very tough to beat Burn. It does have the Radiant Fountains. It's not going to be enough. Same thing with Chittering Rats. It's a lot of dead cards like Night Whispers, Sign in Bloods are just things you have to try to side out. This deck can't beat Burn. It's going to be very, very tough to find the Consume Spirit to get there. But it's going to do quite well again versus the dual color decks. The other so Icequake and these are so good versus the bounce lands, as you just set back your opponent so much. And then the Chittering Rats can then set your opponent back even more, and the Anglers takes quick work of them after that. So really cool deck for a land destruction deck. And now we have the Flicker version of Black Blue. Nope, this is actually isn't Flicker. It's just Angler, Augur Bolus, and All Control. So I talked about this one earlier, how this one is just trying to find enough cards in the graveyard. It actually doesn't look like it's trying to fill up the graveyard in any way either. It's going to fill up the graveyard just by stopping everything that you're doing. So yeah, it's got the Vampiric Links in the sideboard for the burn match. All right, so this one is just the Whirlpool Rider, and yeah, this is a Jace's Erasure. It's kind of weird they're running the Delver Secrets in here. They do have the alternate win condition of actually winning with damage. I don't know how I feel about that, but obviously it can get the job done. What this does is try to establish a Jace's Eraser. Whenever you draw a card, you have target opponent put the top 2 cards of his library into his graveyard, and then you just run all of the draw spells: Ponder, Preordained, Brainstorm. We have Gush, we have Thought Scour, we have Snap. Snap just returns the Whirlpool Raiders. Yep, Riders, that's what it is. Echoing Truth does as well. Candor, it can be used as a kind of control. And then Daze, Deprive, Counterspell. So then the Whirlpool Rider says, when it comes into play, shuffle the cards from your hand and draw that many cards. So with Jace's Razor, of course, you can see that it mills quite a bit with the Whirlpool Rider. So I don't know where they would run with this. Like, isn't there some blue creatures that can bounce the Whirlpool Rider? One of my cards that I have an upcoming deck where I'm 5 minutes out of 27 minutes editing for top 10 cards I want downshifted in Pauper, and one of them is the Fairy whatever the 2/1 out of Ravnica is that has to bounce a creature. I think that'd go pretty well in this deck. I don't know, is Delver better? I don't. Maybe Moldrifter is just too heavy on the mana, and I guess Delver is a threat they still have to put the removal in for. I don't know how I feel about it. They completely turn into Delver post board. The Fairy Miscreant spell. Yeah, so I guess they're like, okay, these are the best ones that we can put in the yeah, I guess it makes it miserable to sideboard against. You have a non-creature threat and then creature threats. Kind of cool. All right, so this is just the Frog in the Blender type deck. It's actually, this is just like the red version of Stompy. The Wild Nacatl, It's actually, I'm surprised they're not running 1 planes here with the Ash Barrens and the Evolving Wilds. So Wild Nicotle is only going to be a 1/1, but I think they should just put a one of planes if they're going to be running this, just to pump up that Nicotle. But it's a Curd Ape and Nicotle. They're just trying to get bigger. The Wild, yeah, this actually is more of a Frog in the Blender type list. Frog in the Blender was an old deck back during the Wild Mongrel and Basking Rootwall days that you utilized the Fiery Temper. I'm surprised that's not in here with this deck. Lightning Bolts, Fire Temper, Wild Mongrel, Basking Rootwall. And so the Wild Mongrel could discard either the Fiery Temper or the Basking Rootwall to get +1/+1. And then it would, you know, get basically a free +1/+1, and it would still trigger off and get rid of the cost of either the Basking Rootwall by 1, reduce the cost, or reduce the cost of the Fire Temper by 2. And this one, though, doesn't seem to be all in on that sort of strategy. It's running Lead the Stampedes to fill back up. I don't know how I feel about this. I think this is more of a sideboard card. I'd like to see Fiery Temper in this slot, to be honest. But I didn't 5-0 with it. This person did. Basking Rootwall, Burning Tree Emissary, Goblin Bushwhacker, Goblin Heel Cutter, Curd Ape, Slaughterhorn, Sparksmith. Deals X damage to our creature and X damage to you, where X number of goblins. So this is just trying to take care of not a lot of goblins in here, just here, here, and here. So just a lot of, it's just really killing the 1-drops. Kind of awkward too. I don't know if you'd want this in the main. I like another big beefy card here. Slaughterhorn has the Blood Rush, or can just be cast. So there's some it's a very good card there. Yeah, what could they put? I think I'd rather have a, what's the green, the elf here. The 2/2 elf that doesn't untap unless you cast another green spell. I think that works better with like the Burning Tree Emissary in here. You can just go crazy with the Burning Tree Emissary. So I don't know. This to me can be a little more focused, but again, 5-0'd with it. Wasn't me that 5-0'd with it. Is this a zombie list? Oh my goodness, there is some really, really sweet little lists in here. Zombie uses Carnophage, Carrion Feeder, Festering Mummy. This tries to get Gem Palm Polluter to cycle, and then it has target player lose 1 life for each zombie. So you try to run out as many zombies as possible. Running the Ghoul Raiser. Ghoul Raiser gets back a zombie. It's a 3 mana for a 2/2 that returns a zombie. So in this, probably it's going to go with the Gem Palm Polluter. Then you have Grey Merchant of Asphodel as an alternate win condition. The Angler is also a zombie fish. And the Shepherd of Rot that makes players lose life. Oh, this is a beautiful, beautiful deck. Enabler's Inversion. This is a sweet little tech with the Ghoul Raiser. It can get it back. Wow, I'm in love with this deck. I'm going to have to sleeve it up and try it. So we're going to try to stream, and we'll try to play some of these decks here. There's some sweet little lists in here. We have just a regular Bogles list. Tries to use like the R&R lid to get huge, or just the good old... This one tends to be heavier on the Glade Cover Scout, Solana, Ledgewalker, Slippery Bogle. Sometimes they go heavier on the R&R lid here. And this one is just trying to then... it's just typical Bogles. Not much to see here. Here's your stock affinity list, so it should start to see a little more. I think that's why the Izzet Delver is starting to get a nod over the Mono Blue. Is the Izzet Delver is actually good versus affinity. Mono Blue Delver just gets stomped by affinity. So this tries to utilize affinity and then ATOG, and then you have like a 1 of Fling in here, and then 1 of Teamer Battle Rage to have the win condition with ATOG to basically Voltron. If not, you can just beat down with Frogmites, Carapace Forgers, Mirror Enforcers, and good old ATOG here, as they all become, you know, 4/4, a 2/2, and a 4/4 here for very, very little mana, and just running all of the artifact lands and the Springleaf Drums type cards. So really good deck. It's a staple of the Pauper format. This one is Burn, using the Firebrand Archer and the Thermo Alchemist, and there's just a ton of burn spells. This is a Curse of the Pierced Heart. This is a very, very stock list. And now we have the Mono Blue Delver, which is a stock list, and the Elves, which is a pretty much stock list that tries to use the Dissonant Melody and the Lead the Stampede to fill back up your deck. And then I'm surprised that this one is actually utilizing 3 Elvish Visionaries. After piloting this deck, I think that this one's a full playset of Visionaries. Anyway, that's just me. All right, so then we have a Compulsive Research, Deep Analysis, See Beyond, Jace Erasure strategy. This one is in the all-in Jace Erasure, not even trying to run the one that makes you draw cards. And then we have your stock list of another Curse of the Bloody Tome deck. This one is trying to, or another mill deck, but it's trying to do it through Curse. So it's just going to grind you out with the Curse of Bloody Tome. Even has Rhystic Study, Oblivion Ring, and Journey to Nowhere with a ton of Edict effects. kind of cool little deck there. It's got some cool cards in here like Overrule, Counterspell, and you gain X life. That's a pretty sweet Pauper card. A lot of innovations here. Very, very cool. Got the Slivers decks even competing here. Slivers is an old school. You just use the Predatory Sliver and the Sinew Sliver as the lords, and your slivers get big. We have another, this is the Dimir Flicker with the Archaeomancer and the Seagate Oracle and the Moldrifter, so then you use a bunch of flicker effects like Ghostly Flicker. This one's actually low in the flicker effects. Sometimes you see a lot more. So it's just trying to get the value out of these creatures like the Chittering Rats, the Seagate Oracle, the Moldrifter, and eventually just control your opponent's board and then swing in for lethal. Zombie Outlander is a pretty sweet card. It's got pro green. There's actually another version of this deck in a card. I can't remember. Voldalin. It's a Merfolk that you can use. They do the exact same thing. One's a zombie, one's a Merfolk. And we have this one is, okay, this one's a fun little deck. This is an all-in deck with Immolating Soul Eater and the Kiln Fiend, and then the good old Brute Force, Mutagenic Growth, and Temur Battle Rage. A Crone Crusader. So the Crone Crusader can be pumped up. The Immolating Soul Eater can also be pumped up at the cost of 2 life. The Kiln Fiend can be pumped up with the, whenever you cast a non-creature spell, the Mandrake Bully has the Prowess, and the Satyr Hoplite gets, sorry, Crusader creates a bunch of 1/1s, and the Hoplite gets pumped up every time you target it. Seems a little heavy on the creatures. Well, possibly not. It's got Fear of the Bitten and Reckless Charge. I have a very similar deck to this. Very, very cool deck. Very cool deck. Love the innovation there. Another Delver-based deck. No one cares. Another Flicker-based. Nope, this is the Tron. This is the 5-color Tron that does use Rolling Thunder, and the Pulse of Marasa and Capsize. So Capsize, you can just indefinitely return all your opponent's permanents to their hand. The Pulse of Marasa can then lock with a Moldrifter Pulse of Marasa over and over and over. And the Rolling Thunder, once you do have the mana, can just be a one-shot kill. So this is a very stock list of Tron. Another Delver deck. Another black-blue control deck. Here we have the Chomano's Blessing Heroic deck from Mono White. This deck has got a lot of play lately and very, very stock list at this point. This is a cool one too that people are starting to use more of an unblockable strategy for the Delver. So they use the Jessian Thief that got downshifted that has the Stealer of Secrets plus Prowess on it, and the Seeker of Way that has Prowess, and the Elusive Spellfist that has a Sword of Prowess to it that gets +1/+0 and unblockable. And so it's just using Ponder, Preordained, Brainstorm. One of the things I noticed about this deck is when I was running the Tireless Tribe, I first was using Seeker of the Way as the other card, and I was winning a lot of matchups just with Seeker of the Way. And so this is like, okay, we're not going to go for the combo for the Tireless Tribe. We're going to just try to get a creature that has to be answered and then play that gets added benefit off of using a lot of instants and sorceries. So Delver flips, Elusive Spells, this can be a couple turns it can just win by attacking in. Same thing with the Thief, and same thing with the Seeker of the Way. So very, very cool deck. This is another Tron deck that's using the Ulamog's Crusher and heavy on the Rolling Thunders as the win condition, running like Ancient Stirrings and Expedition Map to try to find Tron as quickly as possible. So you can do this sort of strategy to try to dig for Tron or control Tron. So to each his own how people play it. This is another Cumulative Knowledge, black-blue. Lots of black-blue. I guess they hit this list because I think you just have to have 10 unique cards to be able to hit the... I can't remember how... Or 20 unique cards different from a different list. And then it will show up. So you're going to see a lot of black-blue control because they're very versatile of what they can use. Goblins list. This is the good old Goblins that also splash, or they run Burning Tree Emissary and Valley Dasher just for some added. I don't know if you'd actually call this Goblins. They do run a lot of Goblins, but yeah, they don't really have any synergy from Goblins. Yeah, yep. So it's just a mono red aggro-based deck. And it's got the Lightning Bolts, Fire Blast, and Chain Lightning. This is the burn strategy. And the Bushwhacker, Burning Tree Emissary. All right, another black-blue control. And that is all. So, man, this list ended up longer than I thought it'd be to give analysis of this deck. We'll try to do some live stream of the Pauper format. There are some beauties in here. So my vote is we either sleeve up Zombies. Zombies was really cool. Rebels was really, really cool. And... what was the other one I was looking at that was pretty sweet here? Man, so much spice in this that I don't even know where to start. But yeah, we'll try some of these these sweet little decks and maybe even innovate on them. I've got a few other decks I want to showcase that are some innovation, try to 5.0 with them. I've got the Kiln Fiend Infect, I think will be fun to showcase. It's using Kiln Fiend that can get Infect, or it's using Infect cards that can just two-shot. You can use like 2 spells to win with. But anyway, this video's gone on long enough. I'm going to have some more high production videos coming out here, so just want to get some content out there to hold everyone over until that content comes out. This has been Kevin with RogueDeckbuilder.com. Thanks for watching.